Exclusive conversation with India Today's Rajdeep Sardesai and Rahul Srivastava.
Hello and welcome to this India Today special, where we are going to look at the two big hot button issues of the moment, the Citizen Amendment Bill and the state of the economy. With me is my colleague Rahul Srivastava, and with us is someone eminently qualified to look at these two issues, the former Union Home and Finance Minister, Mr. P Chidambaram, in his first major interview to national TV since he came out of judicial custody last week. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Chidambaram. Let's start with the Citizen Amendment Bill, because the government is saying that Mr. Chidambaram and the likes of him are engaging in fear-mongering when you say that the CAB will lead India into a Hindutva Rashtra. This is fear-mongering. The bill is not anti-Muslim. It is constitutional, providing protection to persecuted minorities.
Who said it is constitutional? I asked this question.
Harish Salve told me in an interview
That is an
the other
opinion
day.
of a lawyer. I want to know who was the final advice to the government. Was it the Law Department, Legislative Department, or was it the Attorney General of India? I said, if it is the Attorney General of India, why don't you call him to the House? We can ask him a few questions. Place his opinion in the House. They won't do that. In the last couple of months, amendments made by this government to important bills have been struck down by the court. The PMLA amendment was struck down. The Arbitration Act amendment was struck down. So why do you assume that your law department and your legislative department are the final words on constitutionality of a law?
No, are you saying therefore that you believe that the CAB will be struck down by the Supreme Court, because the Law Minister, Ravi Shankar Prasad, made it very clear that it has been vetted by the Law Ministry?
We know the Law Ministry. Let's not say much about the Law Ministry. I gave you two examples of Law Ministry vetted bills which were struck down in the last few months. The point is, the bill is, in legal language, we call it a highly suspect bill. It's a highly vulnerable bill. And there are many eminent voices which have said the bill is unconstitutional. I'll give you three names: Mr. Soli Sorabji, Mr. Justice Santosh Hegde, Mr. Justice Madan Lokor.
I gave you the name of former Solicitor General Harish Salve, who said it qualifies within the reasonable classification category as an exception to Article 14.
I'm not denying that there will be two sides to an argument, but I believe that ultimately the weight of argument lies in favor of striking down this bill.
Sir, in your house, you said that this changes the definition of granting citizenship through an executive fiat, and it will eventually be adjudicated by the judges who are not elected representatives, undermining the parliament. While the government is saying that this is a tailor-cut law for certain minorities persecuted in 3 countries. It's just for them. It does not talk about exclusions.
Precisely our argument. In Article 14, there's a principle called under-inclusive and over-inclusive. If there are birds of the same feather, all birds must flock together. You can't leave out some birds. If there are birds of other feathers, they should not be brought along with this flock. This bill only chooses 3 countries, under-inclusive.
No, but again,
This bill only chooses 6 communities, under-inclusive. Let me illustrate it. It admits Hindus, but keeps out Sri Lankan Hindus. It admits Christians, keeps out Bhutanese Christians. Now, what is the classification?
But sir, the government says that even in the past, when the Congress has been in power, there have been exclusions made. There have been specific inclusions. For example, when Ugandan Indians were granted citizenship, the government claims, they claim that when Mrs. Gandhi, after 1971, when refugees were coming from across the border in Bangladesh, created special categories, or at least gave certain special benefits to those who are coming across. They even cite a letter sent by Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot to you, saying Hindu and Sikh refugees in Rajasthan need special benefits. They've even cited Manmohan Singh 2003 writing to the government when he was leader of the opposition that this is not the first time this has happened.
This is typical of this government. When it fails, it will cite some past instance without a context and without justifying or explaining why that context arose. If, say, in a particular year, and I can't remember the details now, a bunch of refugees had come into Rajasthan and had been living as refugees in a refugee camp for many years, and they've been living there. And the Chief Minister of Rajasthan points out that, like I think we have in Delhi, Majnu ki
Katila.
Please now look at that. What has that got to do with passing a bill in Parliament? A bill in Parliament is a law for all time to come. What are you telling? And please explain the example I gave you. If Hindus are admitted, why are Sri Lankan Hindus not admitted?
Are you trying to say that the catch lies in the definition of persecuted minorities?
In fact, that gives rise to a larger issue. The guys who have all come in, they've all come in before 31st of December 2014, the new cutoff date. They've come in and already have given a story. Each one has said, I was born here. Or he has said, I've come before 25th March 1971. Or he said, my father came in before June 1948. He's already given a story. That story, in 1.9 million cases, has been rejected by the NRC exercise. And they've been declared as foreigners. Today, the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Sikh, among that 1.9 million, will have to give a very different story. He has to say, I was persecuted in the year so-and-so, in this village or this town, on the ground of religion. I'm a victim of religious persecution, and therefore I came to India, and therefore please admit me. Now, which story is true? The earlier one is a lie and this is the truth, or this is the lie and that is the truth. You are asking somebody to eat his old story and narrate another story. So that is the only story that will pass under this law.
You're saying both on procedural grounds as well as substantively, you are creating a potential nightmare for officials, for citizens. The government, again I reiterate, sir, is saying that the violence that has followed in the Northeast and a few other parts is being fanned in a way by the opposition. They are, as I said at the outset, saying this is fear-mongering. You're not revealing the truth to public. You're consistently saying it's anti-one community.
Rubbish. We are saying, even before the bill was moved, we said, don't move this bill now. First, discuss with people. Why did you move this bill in a great hurry? What was a great hurry to pass this bill on Monday in the Lok Sabha and on Wednesday in the Rajya Sabha?
What do you think was the hurry?
I don't know. The hurry is they seem to be in a tearing hurry to implement their Hindu Rashtra agenda. In 7 months, look at all the things they've done. 7 months, criminalized triple talaq, repealed Article 370, done an NRC exercise in Assam for 1,600 crore, wasted because this exercise has been scrapped, and now the CNAB bill. In the first 7 months of a new government, are these the priority issues? The priority issues were agriculture, employment, quickening the growth rate of the economy, putting an end to lynchings and rape, restoring law and order. Those were the priority items. But they have put all of that on the back burner, and these 4 issues have dominated the narrative, dominated the mind space for the last 7 months. Of course, Ayodhya is the 5th one. But is this the agenda of the new government? Is this it should be the front-loaded agenda of the new government?
Chief, there is one point here that this bill was around in 2015. The point here is that do you see that the rush, despite the government knowing that there will be trouble in Northeast, they went into it for it now because somewhere they were worried over the impact of NRC on Bengali Hindus. Is there a connect to that?
Obviously, CAB and NRC, I've called them Siamese twins. They're consanguineous twins. Apply both to any state. If you apply NRC first, you will exclude. And under the CAB, you will bring in all the non-Muslims. If you apply CAB first, you will include all the non-Muslims, and then NRC will exclude only the Muslims. So the net result of CAB plus NRC is only Muslims will be excluded. And how does the Home Minister say, without blinking an eye, it is not an exclusionary law? Apply CAB and NRC together. The effect is the net result is exclusion.
But I've heard from Assam BJP politicians and to some extent national BJP politicians that if the Congress is today accusing us of majoritarianism or Hindutva Rashtra as you call it, the Congress was guilty of minorityism. They claim the demographics of Assam are being changed, districts, there's been an influx of Muslims from across the border, and somewhere the government needed to call a halt to it.
Is that the issue today? World over, migration can only be managed. Migration cannot be stopped. History of the world is a history of migration. Be that as it may. People have come into India. Let's assume a significant number were illegal migrants. But also remember the historical context. We were one country, divided into two, and then divided into three. The cow which grazes into the field in Bangladesh doesn't respect the international border. Similarly, people driven by economic aspiration or suffering economic deprivation cross, they come. Migration has happened. Let's assume it's illegal migration. You should have stopped it there. All right, governments have come, governments
including
have
your
gone.
government.
Of course, who says no? If the BJP had been a party in the independence movement, it would have formed a government earlier also. Therefore, we were the first party in this country, the tallest party, we ruled long enough. Show me one example where there are many examples where migration has been stopped. Show me one example where large-scale migration has been reversed. Show me one example. President Trump was not able to reverse large-scale illegal migration. You think 1.9 million people can be thrown out of this country? And where will you throw them out? Which country is willing to take them? I've got a whole series of questions on what you are going to do about the guys whom excluding.
Because Amit Shah says, I am reversing or correcting the distortions of partition.
How?
He claims partition was done on religious grounds. People at the Nehru Liaquat Pact, which promised protection to minorities, didn't operationalize itself in Pakistan. We need now to protect these minorities in these three countries.
Please understand, it is the Hindu Mahasabha, Savarkar, which sowed the seeds of the two-nation theory, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah picked it up from Savarkar and the Hindu Mahasabha. The original sinners were three: Hindu Mahasabha, their resolution, Savarkar, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Congress was the last, the very last among the political parties in 1946 to reluctantly agree to a division of India. We are not going to take lessons from the BJP on the history. Leave history aside. Everybody can go back and read history books. I'm asking a simple question. All right. You've applied NRC, you've applied CAB, you've identified X number of people as illegal migrants under section 21B. The bulk of them, all of them will be Muslims. Leave that aside. I asked the government and let them give a straight answer. They have not answered this question so far. What are you going to do to them? Where will you send them? Which country is agreeing to take them? And if no country is agreeing to take them, where are you going to put them? In camps? Will there be concentration camps? One camp is being constructed in Assam to house 3,000 people at a cost of 40 crore, just the construction. 10,000 people will require 120 crore. 1 lakh people will require 1,200 crore. 10 lakh people will require 12,000 crore. This is in one state. And what about feeding them? What about educating their children? What about taking care of their health care? And how long will they live? Will they remain for the rest of their lives? And what happens to your children? None of these questions have been answered. I don't think the government has even thought through what it will do for the outcome of the NRC-CAB.
So before we end this segment on NRC-CAB, tell us what do you where does this then end? What is it simply now all dependent on what the court decides?
As far as the CAB is concerned, the Citizenship Amendment Bill is concerned, the final word rests with the court, and I'm pretty confident, nobody can be absolutely confident, I'm pretty confident on both on grounds of equality and in the new ground which the Supreme Court has developed in recent judgment, constitutional morality, this bill will be struck down.
Can I ask one question here? You see, the Congress has had its own share of heightening the crisis in the Northeast when it comes to illegal immigrants. The IMDT Act, you were a minister in that government, the manner in which the entire thing moved. But today, do you see that can this eventually lead to defranchising lot of Muslims who have come from Bangladesh and several other countries? Do you see that as the ultimate aim? Because reversing, as you said, illegal migration is absolutely impossible.
All right. I'm glad that you are ahead of the Home Minister and saying reversing is impracticable. So perhaps what will they do? They'll identify them and disenfranchise them. They will not give them a vote.
Which was your
Maybe.
vote?
Maybe.
Presumably.
Can they deny them the right to work? Can they deny them the right to a ration card? Can they deny them the right to a homestead? These are human rights, irrespective of the right to vote. So the maximum you can do is disenfranchise them.
But the government says
What
this
will
is
you-
only to do with illegal migrants from Bangladesh. The Congress is making it out to be as if every Muslim is going to be under the scanner in the country. That's where the fear-mongering comes.
There will be. I'm giving you an example. The Sri Lankan Muslim is out because Sri Lanka is out and Muslims are out. The Sri Lankan Hindu is out because although the Hindus are in, Sri Lanka is out. So as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, the grievance of the Tamil people is, why are our Sri Lankan brethren who speak Tamil, Muslims and Hindus, being kept out of your exercise? If your exercise is to extend a helping hand to the victims of persecution, why are Sri Lankan, Tamil, Muslims and Hindus
The average
kept
Muslim
out?
who's been living here for years is safe.
We are not talking about that Muslim. There are 200 million people. We don't need your charity to say they are safe. They are safe because they are Indians.
Let's turn then to the other big issue, which you claim in a way, some are claiming CAB is a distraction from the crisis of the economy.
It only distracts the government. It doesn't distract the people who are affected. The people who are affected are fully conscious that the economy is sinking and the CAB is only adding political oil to an economic fire.
Because today the finance minister has once again addressed the media and said again that the Congress is exaggerating the situation, that things are coming under control. Don't worry, the Congress is wrong when it says that we've lost control of the economy or that we are clueless.
I have read the statement. It is a string of irrelevancies. Today, food inflation touched 10%. Factory output shrunk 3.8%. Retail inflation has crossed 5%, beyond the Reserve Bank's range. And the third quarter will be below 5%, sub 5%. If 3 quarters are 5, 4.5, and let's assume 5 again, the year will end with less than 5% growth. And this 5% growth, because of the change of methodology, as Arvind Subramaniam constantly reminds us, is equivalent to about 3 or 3.5% of the old methodology.
So A, you don't accept that it is cyclical as the government says.
Of course
you seem to
not.
believe it's structural. And B, do you see us heading towards a state of stagflation as some are suggesting?
There are only 2 people who believe that it's cyclical. One is the finance minister and one is the chief economic advisor. Yesterday, I was talking to a very distinguished, well-known economist, and he just threw up his hands and said, what do we do? We are telling this is structural, and then this government says it's cyclical. We are saying that the issues on the demand side, the government says issues on the supply side and takes supply side measures. I think this government has got it completely wrong. Either they don't know, or they know but they don't want to admit it.
Chief, what
More likely, I think they don't know.
Chief, when it comes to these figures you're saying, you see, as finance minister, along with Morarji Desai, you have presented the maximum number of budgets. When it comes to these growth figures, you have been there. 2008, 2009, 3.9%. According to 2011-12 base, 3.1%. 13, 14, 5%. Say with 11, 12 figures, 6.4. Inflation was very high.
Don't compare
but you are
year
saying,
on year.
do you see no green shoots here? Is that the point?
Don't compare year on year. What is happening in 2019-20 has no relevance to what happened in 2008-9. 2008-9 was the international meltdown. So don't compare that year's 3.8 or 3.9 with this. The whole world collapsed. 1,000 banks collapsed in America. Don't compare year on year. You have to compare what happened in that year with what happened in the earlier year.
But how do you, when the world is not growing at 8% today, how do you expect India to grow at 8?
I'm not saying that the world is growing at 8% and India is not growing. Despite the world not growing at 8%, you should take steps to grow at a higher rate. And there are ways to do it.
Give us those ways.
Yes.
What would you do?
Let me tell you.
What would you do?
In 2000, when I returned to the finance ministry in 2012, our fiscal position was very bad. High inflation, high fiscal deficit, high current account deficit, because we had to do the stimulus packages by my predecessor. But I pulled back, and Mr. Raghuram Rajan has acknowledged it in his long essay, that after he returned, he tried to bring back macroeconomic stability. 12-13 was half a year. In 13-14, we did pull back.
Yeah.
And the growth rate went up.
Yes.
You look at the growth rate.
Yes.
We contained the fiscal deficit. We contained the current account deficit sharply. And growth rate went up to 6 point something.
6.1.
So what would you do, Mr. Chidambaram, that this government has not done? Because this
First,
government says 8
this government-
you know,
this-
let's assume, forget what the government says for a moment. There is a demand crisis. You speak to people in the private sector.
FM doesn't agree with that.
No, FM may not agree, but it's very clear that industry believes there's a demand and that leads to a consumption problem. And there is a problem of credit as well, a
Yes.
credit squeeze with
Yes.
NBFCs and the banking sector. Some of which this government says is a legacy
Well,
of your
My
of
first
UPA
suggestion
years.
will be to make you finance minister. You've got it right. You've understood the two problems.
No, so you tell us the solutions to the two problems.
First solution, they must have the humility to admit they made serious mistakes. Demonetization was a serious mistake. The design of the GST was completely wrong, and the implementation of the GST was worse. They gave extraordinary powers, and those powers still remain, for the tax and the investigating agencies. And they have put fear in the minds of investors by indulging in retrospective taxation and retrospective demands of humongous sums of money from various people. Now, they must admit all these were mistakes. Let's assume they were genuine mistakes. After admitting they were mistakes, they must say, what is the diagnosis of the problem here? If the diagnosis says it is a demand problem, but there is no demand, there's no purchasing power, there's not enough money in the hands of people to buy goods and services, they must accept that our diagnosis was wrong. They must accept that that diagnosis, that is a cyclical, is wrong. Once they admit all these things, then we can lay out the prescription for what needs to be
What
done.
is that prescription? What would you do if you were Nirmala Sitharaman?
First, I'll resign.
You'll resign.
Yes.
You believe Nirmala Sitharaman should resign?
No, I will resign because her assessment is completely wrong. If my assessment was so wrong, I would resign. If my assessment of the situation was so completely wrong, I should resign, isn't it? Economist after economist is telling her, and she won't listen. I'm not asking her resignation. That's for the Prime Minister to decide. But if she continues to maintain this broken record song, that it is cyclical, we are in command, who believes it? Tell
Your
me.
prescription, sir.
One, address the demand side. The supply side will take care of itself. Address the demand side. Make sure people have more money to spend, which means cut regressive taxes and don't cut progressive taxes. What have they done? They have cut corporate tax and they're going to increase the GST. Exactly the wrong thing to do. And they are promising to cut the personal income tax.
Today they've said very clearly that there's still this move that they're going to increase GST is unfounded. They haven't taken any decision to this effect. And
What will they do?
And reducing personal income tax is also not yet firmly on the agenda.
They've got a huge deficit today. They raided the RBI treasury, took 1,75,000 crore rupees. Remember, they said this is going to meet the fiscal deficit and will take care of infrastructure. What did they do? They used 1.5 lakh crore to give a bonanza to 800 corporates. We have calculated it. It's exactly 800 and odd companies which are benefiting from the corporate tax rate cut. So 1.5 lakh crore went to 800 pockets. Now again they're left with the old fiscal deficit. They have to raise money. All right, they may not cut personal income tax. They have to raise some tax. Which tax are they going to raise? If they raise GST, it will depress the demand you're talking about further. People will buy less, no? For the first time, non-durable, fast-mover consumer goods is declining. First time. Very rarely it happens.
Would you cut personal income tax?
Of course not. This is not the time to cut personal income tax. And this is from a person who cut personal income tax radically in 1997. I believe personal income tax should be cut, but this is not the time to do it. You do it in fair weather. You don't do it now.
Chief, you seem to be agreeing with Arun Jaitley, who said that indirect taxes are regressive, direct taxes are progressive.
But
well known. You know, there is a problem. When you say GST was hastily implemented, you started talking about GST. You started talking about GST in 2006. The first empowered committee was formed in 2009, 2011. The first time the amendment was moved, it lapsed. Now, something which moved in 2006 as one of the bigger reforms which you yourself wanted, in 2017, July 1st, you are saying was in a hurry.
I didn't say
in a body which is federal in character. You have all the chief finance ministers in it.
Understand. The GST Constitution Amendment Bill was not drafted by the GST Council. The GST Act was not drafted by the GST Council. GST Council is a product of the Act. This was drafted by the Government of India. Mercifully, they invited the Congress party to one meeting. And I said, show us the draft and take our inputs on the draft. They refused to show us the draft. The draft was only unveiled on the floor of the House. Then I said, show us the rates. They refused to share the rates with us. When the bill was unveiled, they said rates will be fixed later.
Because they were worried that if it becomes part of the constitutional amendment, Constitution has to be amended again and again.
But you could have done it in the GST law. And they said the rates will be notified later. And I pleaded, play back my speech. I said, your CEA has given a report of the revenue neutral rate. It is between 14.5 and 15. Keep the rate around 14.5 and 15. They came up with this mind-boggling 8 rates, starting from 0 to 40. On that day, I knew that the GST had got off to a false start.
But let's look at the two issues which you said make me qualified to be the finance minister. You said demand.
At least your diagnosis is right.
My diagnosis is right. One is demand and the other is the credit squeeze. The government says they are addressing the issue of credit squeeze. They are addressing the issue of NBFCs. They are addressing the issue of the banking crisis.
What are they addressing?
They are pumping monies into banks which have been struggling otherwise and providing credit to industry. So they are claiming we are fixing the problem. We now understand the problem.
They've been doing this for the last 12 months.
So you don't go along with this view that we are now, the government believes we are now fixing the problem. The worst is over. By April, May, things will be better again.
I've heard this worst is over for the last 8 months. It's like a broken record. Firstly, they have to induct talent into this government. I'm not saying at the political level. That's a call which the Prime Minister makes, and only he can make. They have to induct talent into the government. What did they do? They banished the talent that was available in the government. They had Dr. Arvind Panagriya, they had Dr. Raghuram Rajan, they had Dr. Arvind Subramaniam, they had Dr. Urjit Patel. They got rid of them one by one. Induct some talent induct people who are au fait with what's going on in the rest of the world today. I'm not saying an Indian economist is grown here and working here is bad, but he's not au fait with what's happening in the rest of the world. You need talent which is respected and acknowledged all over the world. And that talent is available in Indians who are willing to come and work in India. And you banish them. The day Abhijit Banerjee gets a Nobel Prize and makes a statement, India's doing badly. That's all he said, doing badly. A minister pounces on him and says, don't say these things. What do you know about India? The day Rahul Bajaj stands up and says, in a very mild tone, we are afraid, the FM pounces on him and says, don't make these individual opinions public. They are not good for the country. I mean, what kind of a reaction is this?
Are you trying to say that the government's economic agenda and drive lacks talent?
Absolutely.
Starting from the finance ministry.
I'm not taking any particular ministry. Political talent is for the Prime Minister to scout and identify. I'm not going to comment on that. But there is something known as subject matter knowledge and talent. That can be brought into the government.
Chief, you talked about the stimulus offered by your predecessor. That was supposed to be a problem area. When you left, the government eventually came up with this AQR. That was a positive step in 2015. The asset quality had to be reviewed. The banks were actually hiding and covering up the kind of NPAs they were sitting on.
Yeah, I can't speak for
They
my
came up with
predecessor.
insolvency. Do you think now it is also time for the private sector to step out, or they can't always wait for stimulus? What is wrong? You said tax Raj and tax.
After the international financial crisis, I was there until November, and Dr. Manmohan Singh and I agreed we will do one stimulus package, which was done in about December. Now, I think that was very necessary. Quantitative easing, unconventional monetary policy, all these are different names. We call it stimulus package. The second stimulus package was debatable. I think the third stimulus package was an overkill. Now that is the view which a number of economists have taken in hindsight. But hindsight is always very bright. But the finance minister of the day, in consultation with the Prime Minister, did 3 stimulus packages. It did put our economy out of helter-skelter.
Did it start a bad habit? Did it cultivate
Well, I can't
it?
say, see, there was a lot of uncertainty there. We didn't know how long the international financial crisis would last. We didn't know what new depths it will touch. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of fear. I think, as I said, hindsight is always very bright and sure.
But you said overkill.
Because
I think the third one was, and I think Professor Srinivasan, who passed away a couple of years ago, wrote a small paper on this, and he came to the conclusion. The first one was necessary. The second one was for abundant caution, and the third one was wrong.
let's come back to today and end this bit on the economy by asking you, therefore, I come back to what I asked you. What would you do that is dramatically different to this government, apart from, of course, as you said, first admitting that there is a problem?
And all that. I've said so. I said, I will address the demand side.
Yes.
Make sure there's more expenditure which puts money in the hands of the poor people, the bottom 20-25%.
Right.
Which means Maganrega, rural wages, agricultural wages, daily labor, industries related to daily labor, construction. Those are the focus areas so that people have more money. That's the first thing to address. The second thing to address is to boost the confidence of the Indian investor. Today, he's not going to invest. You give him another corporate tax cut, he will deleverage himself first, he will pay himself more dividends, and if he's still got some money left, he'll buy a yacht, and then he might put in some machinery. Nobody is going to invest. Your power capacity today, your thermal power plants are working at 49% plant load factor. What does that mean? 51% of all installed thermal power capacity is idle. there's no buyer for electricity, why would anybody produce electricity, although we've got coal reserves and for another 200 years? Therefore, you have to put confidence in the investor. All right, I'm addressing the demand side. Don't worry, demand will pick up. Demand is picking up. You see cars are selling, scooters are selling, FMCG goods are selling. There's more money in the hands of Maganrega labor. There's more money in the hands of rural agricultural labor. Now please produce more. You have to add, there has to be a sequencing of steps. No? First address the demand side. Then address the confidence of the investor to invest. Rest will follow.
As we end, Mr. Chidambaram, we're interviewing you after several months. You've been in judicial custody for more than 100 days. I want to understand at a personal and political level, what have these 106 days in judicial custody meant for you? How have you changed? What have you learned?
No, my spirit is very strong. Nobody could break my spirit. And as I said, sleeping on a wooden cot has made my spine and my back and my neck stronger. You should try it.
There wasn't a single day in these 106 days where you felt that the world was closing around you. The powerful former finance and home minister was now in judicial custody. Did you, I know you can't speak on the specifics of the case, but did you see it as political vendetta?
I had Tirukkural with me all the time. Tirukkural says, Inna seidarkum iniyave seyyakal yenna payattado salbu. How are you noble if you don't do good even to those who do evil to you?
And you can watch that full